Okay, it's 2 minutes after 10, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Heather Pellet. I'm here with Molly DeFiore.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. We are the marketing team here at Dagostino, and we're just going to run through, an outline of the E-rate program and go through the application process, talk about some of the eligible, give me one second. You flip this to the next screen. We're going to talk about some of the eligible products and services. Like I mentioned, talk about the application process, talk about some key dates, and then we'll kind of open it up for Q&A if there's any questions out there. All right. So the E-rate program is commonly known as E-rate, but the official name is the Schools and Libraries Program. It provides discounts of 20 to 90% for telecommunications and internet access, and it is administered by the Universal Service Administration Company, USAC, under the direction of the FCC. Under E-rate, the best thing about E-rate is that it has what's called the lowest corresponding price rule, which is defined as the lowest price that a service provider can charge an applicant. So basically, it protects the customer from getting overcharged. The LCP rule makes sure service providers do not charge E-rate customers more than they would charge other customers. So who's eligible? K through 12 schools, public, nonprofit, and some private. Basically, schools that are eligible have to meet the definition of either an elementary school or a secondary school under the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001. The big thing here is that obviously schools that serve above grade 12 are not eligible, and then they must, of course, be a nonprofit, institutional, day, or residential school, including public. They can include public, elementary, and secondary charter schools that provide the equivalent education. Libraries, public and many private libraries are eligible to apply. Public libraries, of course, within schools are eligible as long as they have a budget separate of the school district's budget. Research library, a private library, can apply if the state in which the private library is located says they can, basically. Non-traditional participants are also eligible, such as Head Start programs, pre-K, adult education, juvenile justice programs. So how is funding determined? Basically, funding is determined based on the National School Lunch Program, and libraries are rated on the same program within the school district in which they are located. And then, of course, the urban and rural status of the population served. So if you have more students that are eligible for the National School Lunch Program, you obviously get more funded, and that kind of makes sense. Category 1, Category 2, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but this kind of chart outlines the percent discount. All right, eligible services. So each year before the filing window opens, which is obviously not yet open yet for funding year 2019, but the services are broken down into two categories. So Category 1 and Category 2. Category 1 is basically, if you think of it this way, is how the internet or the communication gets to the building. Category 2 is how that internet is then distributed out across the buildings or buildings. The big thing for funding year 2019 is voice services are no longer eligible. If you're familiar with E-rate, you know that over the last several years, they've been kind of phasing out voice services. Well, they're gone. No more voice services. All right, here is a long list of Category 1 services. We're not going to run through all these. I will send this presentation out once this webinar is complete, so you can kind of look at these. But again, here's eligible Category 1 services. Category 2 services, this is more of our Dagostino's domain. These are all services that we provide, switches, routers, racks, wireless access points, cabling, firewall services, wireless control systems. And then again, here's a list of our products and services that we offer. The important thing to kind of mention here is that the firewall cannot be separate from the internet service provider's basic firewall. So if they don't have a firewall, we can provide it. Cabling, of course, is something else that we can provide, but it can't be directly or only connected to voice services, right? Because voice was phased out this year. I'm not going to go through this entire list again. I'll share this presentation with you, but these are the products and services that we specialize in that we can install. Here are the manufacturers that we work with. All of these manufacturers offer products and solutions that are eligible under Category 2 of E-rate. Okay, so the big thing when you go to apply for E-rate funding is you need to have access to what's called the E-rate Productivity Center, the EPC for short. And basically that's just your online portal. That's where you do everything. You log in, you apply for funding, you upload forms, you can manage your process, you can receive notifications, that's how you contact customer service. It's like basically where you go for everything. So if you don't have access to this, you can contact the E-rate program team. It's a 1-800 number listed Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And again, we'll send you this whole PowerPoint so you have all this information. And then, you know, it links off to where the website where the EPC is. If you already have access to the EPC, at the beginning of the month, October 1st, the administration window opened. So basically, you can go in there now and make sure all your information is okay and accurate, verify your FCC registration number, review your address and contact information, make sure you have all the appropriate people in your district or library listed or all your buildings listed. You, of course, want to make sure that's all accurate. For your schools, you can update your student counts. You're supposed to use the most recent student information you have. Now, if you don't have updated numbers yet for this year, you can use last year's as long as you're using the most recent student count. Of course, pay attention to the peak part-time student counts, and this means the maximum number of part-time students you have in your building at any given time. Libraries should make sure that the square footage for each branch is accounted for, identify the main library branch, and then make sure your IMLS local code is accurate.
Okay, and I'm going to cover the application process. The first step is competitive bidding. Applicants should identify, the products and services that you need for your buildings so that service providers like Dagostino can review and bid. You'll fill out and submit a Form 470 via the online portal, and make sure that you use a descriptive nickname for your application so you can find it later. I mean, you can imagine a lot of these applications are going to be similar throughout the school district. So, make it memorable so that you can find it. And then in Pennsylvania, an RFP is not required except for public schools seeking a Category 2 equipment over minimum state bidding threshold requirements, which was $19,400 in 2018. And it's also not required for applicants applying for dark fiber or self-provision fiber, maintenance of dark fiber, and C1 network equipment. And then if an RFP is submitted, it must be uploaded at the same time as your Form 470. One big note is Dagostino cannot assist with bids or RFPs. No vendors are allowed to per the FCC rules. So unfortunately, as much as
we'd love to help,
as we would love to, it's just something that we're not legally able to, and so we will have to deny any request for that. And then the competitive bidding period must remain open for 28 days once your Form 470 is certified by USAC. Form 70s must be submitted at the beginning of any new contract. They are not required for multiple Form 470s are not required for multi-year contracts. Form 470s can list preferred manufacturers. So if your building is all Alcatel-Lucent or all Aruba, you can list Alcatel-Lucent, but you must include the words or equivalent so that other manufacturers can be quoted. Form 70s also can state that bids must be compatible with district's existing XYZ equipment. That way your networks can stay the same. You can also include Category 1 and Category 2 equipment and services on the same form, but as we'll talk about later, that's something you might want to keep separate just for billing purposes. It makes it a lot easier for your Form 471s. And then one thing that Form 470s cannot include are company names. So you cannot put Comcast or Dagostino, something like that. You cannot be that specific with a vendor. And then bidding processes must be open and fair. No secrets. You cannot share information with one bidder and not with everyone. And then all bidders have to be treated the same. You can't give someone advance notice of the project. And then your FCC Form 470 and RFP, if applicable, must be clear and detailed. And then it's hard, but you have to avoid all conflicts of interest. Just keep everything fair. And then once the Form 470 is approved, the vendor proposals are sent directly to you to review. And you are not obligated to purchase any service or equipment. At that point, it can become a discussion. Once you get that far, once the bidding process is closed, then it can become a discussion. Applicants close the bidding process and evaluate bids using a bid evaluation matrix where cost is the most heavily weighted. If only one bid is received, the bid must still meet all cost-effective requirements. If no bids are received, you are allowed to solicit bids by asking a vendor to respond to your Form 470s. Bidders can be disqualified if requirements in the Form 470 or RFP are not met. And USAC can be really, really strict about these. So it's definitely something to make sure that you're following all of the rules and paying attention to how you are communicating with your bidders. And here is an sample bid evaluation matrix. Different factors on the left side, the most important one being the price of the eligible products and services. That one will be the most heavily weighted. And then you pick your vendor based on who wins your matrix.
Right, and this is just a sample. Each school district or library, they will have different factors in how they want to weight and what kind of, percentage or points they give for those different factors. But of course, price is under the whole program should be and must be weighted most heavily.
Correct. Step 3, applying for discounts. Applicants request discounts on eligible services and equipment. You'll fill and submit the Form 471 via the online portal. Separate Form 471s must be submitted for Category 1 and Category 2 equipment and services. And Form 470s must be submitted and certified during the application filing window, but not before the 28-day window is up. You have to give everyone that full 28 days. Step 4 is the application review. After you file and certify the Form 471, reviewers at USAC check the form for completeness and accuracy. They will have an internal review and a final review. Reviewers can ask additional questions to which they have 15 days to respond. Examples include documentation that proves ability to pay, proof of necessary resources to support the installation, like staff training, electrical capacity, etc. Service providers, like Dagostino, can assist applicants in answering questions that do not pertain to the service provider selection process. USAC issues a funding commitment decision letter. And that leads us to step 5, starting the services. This is when the applicant and vendor can discuss project details. Before this, there can be no conversations about it. Once the services have started, the applicant should fill and submit the Form 486 via the online portal. It has to be filed within 120 days. It can be filed early if you have received your funding commitment decision letter. Your services will start in July. You're filing the form on or before July 31st, and you can truthfully make all the certifications on the form. After that, you'll go to the invoice step. There's 2 methods. There's the Form 472, which is the bearer form, and the Form 474, which is the SPI form. The bearer form is filed by applicants who have paid the vendor in full after project's completion. It must be filed within 120 days of project completion. And then applicants must have the Form 498 ID to receive reimbursement payment from USAC. The Form 474 is filed by vendors to receive payment on discounted products and services from USAC. Applicants must pay vendor for non-discounted products and services. So that one can get a little more, you have to keep track of more things with the SPI form versus the bearer form. But those are the two methods, and it's completely up to your district and how you want to invoice those.
Yeah, and we'll just mention the bear form. Obviously, we have a little asterisk next to that, and that's obviously more beneficial to us. But of course, it's ultimately up to the school district or the library. But the bear form is a little more easier to kind of pay the vendor for the services and then get reimbursed rather than the SPI form.
Right. And so here's just a little diagram showing the process overview based on what the school districts or libraries are doing and what the service providers are doing during that process.
Okay, so some quick key dates and guidelines. Funding year 2019 is same as the fiscal year, July 1st, 2019 to July 30th or June 30th, 2020. The filing window for Form 471, of course, this is your request for the bids, your request for annual discounts, typically opens in January and closes in March. These dates listed, January 10th through March 20th, are not official. I repeat, they are not official, but they are what the dates are expected to be. The PA E-rate coordinator, Julie Snell, is very, very educated on E-rate and Pennsylvania and all the guidelines, and these are the dates that she expects the filing window to be. The last date to update profiles in EPC is January 7th. And of course, I mentioned this earlier, this window is open now. If you have access to the EPC, you can log in and make sure all your information is accurate. The last date to file Form 470s is February 20th, 2019. So the state recommendation is have your Form 470s uploaded to EPC by the end of November. The earliest applicants can issue PEPM mini bids to vendors is January 2nd, 2019. And the earliest applicants can purchase Category 2 equipment is April 1st, 2019. Okay, this is another important guideline that we will mention. Applicants, so both you and us, must retain documentation for 10 years. So this includes copies of bids, signed contracts, correspondence between us and you, proof of delivery service, invoices, program forms, any documents, attachments, anything submitted through USAC through that EPC, documentation of any service downtime, and logs of maintenance performed. All right, so this is kind of, we kind of touched on this a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and pull all these in. Molly mentioned that, USAC has, they monitor this, and they have a history of coming down on school districts and vendors if they don't meet certain, or if they do things that they shouldn't be doing, okay? So what we can do, we can have pre-bidding discussions with our school districts. We can discuss our product offerings. We can teach our applicants about new technologies, do product demos, have neutral marketing discussions. We can request technical detail needed to submit a bid after an RFP has been posted, but we cannot help you with those RFPs or those bids. So again, we cannot get inside information from you to gain an unfair advantage. We cannot help you with technology planning. We cannot leave some of our demo equipment on site longer than the loan period. We can't help you, as I mentioned, determine which services should be included in a Form 470 or RFP, and we can't give you gifts in excess of the FCC $20 limit.
In many areas, the line between permissible and non-permissible activities hasn't been very well defined, but the risks of non-compliance are high. The government can deny funding, freeze funding requests, and take back money it has already paid to the school districts or to us. And the FCC is paying closer attention to compliance issues than it did before, now that it's investing additional funds in internal connections. So this is just something, I know we've talked about it multiple times. We just want to be really aware of this and to make sure that we have this line well defined in the sand, just because that protects us both.
Okay, so the free services advisory. Applicants and service providers may not, so basically this just states that we may not kind of use E-rate funding to get ineligible products and services. The value of all price reductions, promotional offers, and free products and services must be deducted from the pre-discount cost of products or services, including in the funding request. So this is basically just to kind of keep everything in line. The cost of eligible components may not be inflated to compensate for reductions in the price of other components. So we can't say we're going to charge more for an eligible service, and then we can give you an ineligible service and use the E-rate funding. And proportionate cost allocation is required between eligible and ineligible components. Okay, so we mentioned the USAC website earlier. This is the direct web address that kind of details what we've gone through in way more detail. There's a toll-free number you can call with questions. And then I mentioned Julie, the PA E-rate coordinator. Her website is great. She's got lots of great information. She holds trainings, both, I believe, webinar and in person, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. But she's very knowledgeable. So if you're in Pennsylvania, she is a great resource. And then, of course, this is our E-rate SPIN number, 498 ID number. And again, you'll get this presentation via email after this webinar. Okay, so here's what I mentioned, Julie Schnell, her email address and web address, and then USAC also has some trainings coming up actually this weekend in DC, which is probably going to be a little tight, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew that these, take place every year. There's this online learning library, which has tons of good resources, and then there's different webinars that you can watch on demand on the USAC's website as well.
And USAC is a great resource. I mean, their website has everything you need to know. So we are happy to ask any questions. If you have some questions, feel free to write them in.
You can type them in the chat box if you do have questions. We thank you for joining. We hope it was informational. I know there's a lot of information. If you've never filled out an application before, we hope this helps you as you go forward.
Mm-hmm. And definitely reach out to Julie or to USAC if you have any technical questions that we're not allowed to answer.
Okay. I don't see any questions come in, so let's see. Give it another 30 seconds or so. Good luck and happy E-rate applying. Okay, great. Thank you all.